Greedy back to give you some slappers that'll keep you doing big damage, because over here we're all about the big damage.
That's a lot of damage!
First we're going to be going over the basics because as basic as they may be, they're the most important foundation of starting off in your quest to be the big portrait in the family pick. Not to toot my own horn here, but before you even watch, why should you listen to me? A monotone sounding random nerd on the internet. Well, I got the proof and can safely say I've been putting in work in every class since the launch in Korea many years ago. And it's led me to hitting MVP on every class except for support for at least 95% of the time. So that's 1 out of 20 times that I don't get MVP, not counting people that wildly outlevel me. I'm going to help you reach this godly ratio of carrying the normal players abreast your majestic bosom of Gigachadliness. So without further ado, let's start off with the most important thing, which is the build. Make sure you know your build and what stats, engravings, skills, tripods, runes, gems, and awakening you're going to be using. If you don't know where to start with this, go to loawa.com and Google Translate the page and look up rankings. In rankings page, pick your class. Open up 5 to 10 profiles to get an idea of what skills, tripods, runes, gems, and engravings that everyone is using. This is a good way to generally get an idea of how to build your character. The caveat here is that if you see a build that's wildly different, you should investigate to make sure it's not their mob clearing or PvP build first. Then investigate further into why it would work in a raid setting. The safest bet is to follow the majority build first and then slowly deviate into what may suit you better if there's any deviation at all. The next thing is engravings. People seem to underestimate how powerful an engraving can be, especially class engravings. The amount of people I see running around without a class engraving, even in T2 Guardian raids, baffles me. Most class builds revolve around a class engraving, and this is solely what gives a build its synergy, so if you haven't chosen a class engraving, make sure you pick one up and equip or double equip it if you need to. Next is to be as prepared as possible. Know the boss or the dungeon you're going into. With a few proper preparations with a plethora of guides on YouTube, just watch one before you go in and it'll make a world of a difference if you're a first timer. Knowledge of even 1 or 2 of a boss's moves or special mechanics can help you avoid death and have more uptime on the boss. A little mental coaching side tip here. Don't go into these fights shook. Don't be afraid you're gonna die because most likely you'll be too busy worrying and not actually paying attention to the mechanics and then actually get clipped and die. 100% focus on the task at hand is what will get you through. I understand that going into new content with 0 experience is a daunting task for anyone, and fear of the unknown is something that all of us fear way more than it's actually worth. So don't worry too much, keep focused and do the task at hand, and know that within a week or 2, you'll be farming this shit in your sleep. Now, let's get into a little bit of the more advanced tips. My most important thing for doing big deeps is uptime. You don't get high DPS by hitting once then running around for a few seconds just being safe. You get MVP by consistently pushing yourself and testing the limit of your uptime by greeting DPS. Even though it might make you clench your sphincter here and there, and even though it could get painful if you actually do get hit by the boss, you learn from this and improve vastly from pushing yourself to greet more DPS. At the end of the day, your reactions get faster, your APM gets higher, you feel more comfortable in the pocket, which dramatically helps your reaction and decision making on the fly, and you become a chisel jaw Gigachad. Like some random Instagram post said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and we'll be constantly taking our shots here, and I'll get into a few things that can help you do this. So how to greet DPS? For starters, as said before, uptime is key, but it'll differ from melee to ranged classes. For melee, you want to be dancing around the boss, dodging in and out while getting as many of your skills off as possible without getting hit. For ranged, you want to position yourself better and aim your skills accurately, which I'll get into soon. Both have one thing in common though. You want to do the bare minimum to avoid danger so you can be attacking more. So what that means is, instead of taking 3 steps out of the way of a boss's attack, just take 1 step if you can, or 2 steps if that's what it takes minimum to avoid danger, and then let your skills loose ASAP. This is the art of greeting, and once you get used to this playstyle, you're going to be hitting MVP more often than not. Know your skills. Every class in Lost Ark has a unique combat style and cadence. A lot of skills on these classes will differ in speed, animation, range, and delay. This might sound simple, but to be able to use a skill efficiently on the field will take some practice. This goes back to being prepared for an encounter where you get the gist of a boss's moves and mechanics and rhythm. Once you know his or her bullshit, you can time your skills to hit and not get hit, especially for the longer skills like Sorcerer spellcasts and charge skills on Gunlancer Blade and Zerker. But keep in mind, even if you do everything perfectly, the boss targets people randomly and you will get hit sometimes and interrupted during a big skill. Don't feel bad if this happens, but remember it and try to improve upon how you can execute with minimizing risks next time. So it pays to know the speed of your skills and to ask, can I execute this skill within the time frame given in my situation during the fight? Can I greed more? This is a question that you should be constantly asking yourself during a fight. Don't be satisfied with a safe skill execution and then running around for a few steps and checking to see if you're safe again. This is okay because you're not dying, but if you want big deeps, you're gonna have to push yourself a little more. So you executed a skill safely, the next question is, can I do another one and another one? Never stop greeting DPS. This isn't something to be frowned on because even if you fail at first, you will eventually improve and know the nuances of getting that last hit in while scraping out by the skin of your scorched nuts. Knowing your skills here helps tremendously in greeting deeps. Also know when not to use long animation or casting skills. For example, when you're in front of the turtle when it's low health, it's going to start jumping around, mostly forward, so you don't want to be popping your meteor standing in front of the turtle at that point. Move to the side or behind it and cast it there. And this will take us into positioning. Positioning yourself is also key. The basic tip is don't stand in front of the boss. If the boss is looking at you, chances are it's looking at you like a juicy tenderloin and it's trying to spill your blood to use as wine and make it a meal. So if a boss aggroes on you, wait until it executes its next attack and be out of the way for it, either to its side or behind, and execute your attack right away. This is the very basic fundamental of Combat 101 and boss fights. Most people will know this by instinct, but if you didn't know, now you know. Advanced positioning is being in an opportune spot to be able to do damage without getting hit. It's also knowing where the boss is going to be. For example, if you see a boss is about to charge and you know where he's going to stop charging, you may want to precast to that spot. This comes with knowing a bit of the boss's moves, but if you're a quick learner, you can pick it up in the first run. Next, let's get into skill range. This is something that can help you eke out more DPS during the course of a fight because if you know your range and can max range something from a safe distance and hit while not getting hit, this will make your experience in Lost Ark a lot easier. A lot of classes, even melee, have a pretty decent range on their skills, and the difference between being safe and getting smashed by the boss is the range at which you execute it. For example, a Berserker's finishing strike has a very decent range. Even though it doesn't seem like it, you can use it from a fair distance away from safety and still hit the boss. Because the speed of the skill is slow, you don't want to be caught in the pocket with it, so max ranging the skill when you can is optimal. Know the max range of all your skills to eke out more DPS from a safer position or angle. Next is movement skills. Most classes get a skill that grants movement. Learn to use it to close distance on the boss for more uptime while doing damage or to get out of danger. It should become second nature. If you don't have one, then as said before, our positioning and boss knowledge have to be on par to make up for it. And finally, know your auto attack. Did you know that a lot of classes actually have to use auto attack in between skills? For War Dancer, it's constantly spamming and stutter stepping to animation cancel the third attack and only hitting the 1-2 punch over and over. Berserker, it's also common to constantly be auto attacking while waiting for your cooldowns, and the same goes for Gunlancer. If you didn't know this, make sure to incorporate auto attacks when you got nothing else. Don't just run around being safe, keep attacking even if it's an auto attack. It's still damage and it adds up more than you may think. So with this, you should be bossing it up in no time. Show these bosses who the real boss is. If this helped, post a link to your MVP in the comments. I'll get into more minute details in a part 2 video which really min-maxes PvE combat, which can be trained after these first steps. I'm thinking about starting personal coaching for players that want to do the big deeps but just can't seem to find the groove. I'll be making a personal plan for your needs on Patreon with one-on-one advice from a master DPS fiend. Hit me up in the comments or on Discord if interested. I'll get back as soon as possible. See ya.